was the case before, is the degree to which we predictably are producing a population that will have very high rates of osteoporosis beginning early in their lives. And so the shrunken, collapsed vertebrae that characterize the stooped, aged, immobile, less likely to be able to live an independent lifestyle older woman are going to occur much more frequently and with much greater ferocity as a consequence of the degree to which young women are not physically active during the times of their life when it is possible to make deposits to the bone bank. Now, you can do some things after the age of 19 or 20 which are likely to minimize the drain of that bone bank. That includes physical activity, a diet adequate with calcium intake, etc., etc. But this is a cause for considerable concern. And I digress, and this is not an area of my particular professional interest, but it's an area of very significant public health interest. So, to continue this litany of disparaging, depressing kind of data, we know that 90% of Canada's children don't get 90 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity on a daily basis. And those of us that are of my age or my generation, or perhaps younger, can remember when our parents would shout themselves hoarse, trying to get us to come home as we ripped around the streets and created mayhem and confusion in our neighborhoods, doing all the kind of crazy things that we did. You come back to that record of wallpapers. I mean, those kinds of things were a reality of our life. And unfortunately, that has changed for a variety of reasons that I want to perhaps address in a moment. So we have created what has been described as an obesogenic environment. We have created now a set of social circumstances and pressures and patterns of behavior which become self-reinforcing, which encourage young people to be immobile, inert, inactive, and to eat a diet that is very unhealthy, to say the least, calorie-laden. And so therefore we have this perfect storm of increased caloric intake of basically empty calories from a nutritional perspective, and low levels of physical activity, conspiring to produce a situation that is potentially calamitous. And this is one of the fundamental reasons why. Children do not play anymore. They do not play in the way that we did. And by the way, I'm not arguing for some return to black and white television and getting water from the well. I understand the realities and the progress that has gone on. But we need to completely rethink our approach to helping young children become more physically active. And as in so many other areas of social content, the cartoonists of the New Yorker very often capture the zeitgeist, if you will, the spirit of the day. And this was best represented by this cartoon, Can Johnny Come Out and Eat? It seems absurd, but you know what? In some respects, it's not far from the truth. And as a consequence of this burgeoning epidemic, inactivity, growing levels of obesity, you find publications like the New England Journal of Medicine. And I understand, those of you that aren't in medicine will probably not understand. New England Journal of Medicine is kind of like the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Koran, all rolled into one. Right? When the New England Journal of Medicine pronounces, it's not generally on the basis of some ideological outburst. It's generally on the basis of very considered, sober, thoughtful, I would argue, conservative reflection. So when the New England Journal of Medicine says, unless we can develop some opportunities to address this kind of problem that I've been describing, the steady rise in life expectancy that is typically the hallmark of an evolving, more modern, more developed community. As communities flourish, so does life expectancy. The steady rise in life expectancy that we've observed may soon come to an end. And for the first time in the history of the Western world, the life expectancy of children may be less than that of their parents. And we've already seen that in a couple of communities. The communities of the former Soviet Union, Russia, have had a very substantial decline in life expectancy in recent years as a consequence of a whole variety of social and other challenges. But this is the hallmark of a failing society. When a community's life expectancy begins to decline, something very powerful, something very profound is happening, and it's indicative of something being terribly wrong with the organization, the structure, and the stewardship of that particular society. And the New England Journal isn't alone, because if you cross the Atlantic Ocean, you find that you have an authoritative medical journal, The Lancet, and 3 or 4 years ago, The Lancet pointed out no health system yet anywhere has been able to meet the challenge of managing obesity, and no society has developed an effective strategy to prevent it, which is rather discouraging. Which should not, though, I think, dampen our enthusiasm for trying creatively and cooperatively, thoughtfully and forcefully to identify some solutions, to identify some processes that can allow us to address these epidemiological realities. And the important point here is that this has nothing to do with genetics. This has nothing to do with the impact of various treatment interventions or whatever. Our genes haven't changed one bit. What has happened has been that we have a society in which has evolved an environment which promotes behaviors that lead to sedentary lifestyles and ultimately obesity. And I showed, this was a cover illustration from The Economist several years ago. But, you know, it's kind of funny, and it's whimsical, it's very clever, it's very creative. But it probably reveals a fundamental reality. In the entire history of our evolution as a species, it is quite likely that there have not been as stark or startling changes in our dimensions, in our levels of physical activity, and our health status as has occurred in the last 30 or 40 years. And so while we can look at this with a wry grin, it also probably reveals a disconcerting reality. Well, that reality is going to translate into a whole array of challenges for us in our community as we seek to address the health issues which will inexorably unfold as a consequence of these realities. And again, I don't live, work, and play in this particular area of medicine, but this is an astonishing story. When I graduated from medicine, I know you all know that it was 35 years ago, and I'm older than Methuselah and stuff, but when I graduated from medicine, I can remember being told type 2, we didn't even call it type 2 diabetes. It was called adult onset diabetes. Adult onset diabetes, I remember being lectured, never occurs in individuals below the age of their early 40s or early 50s. That's quite remarkably distinct from juvenile onset diabetes, which reflects an inborn or an inbuilt problem with the pancreas and the production of insulin. Adult onset diabetes generally occurs as people get older, maybe a bit more sedentary, and perhaps gain weight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have communities in Canada today, to our shame, where 100% of the residents of the community are diabetic. We have communities in Canada where we have 12 and 13-year-olds with type 2, used to be called adult onset. We couldn't call it that anymore because 12 and 13-year-olds don't reflect that particular reality. Where 12 and 13-year-olds have type 2 diabetes. And as the proportion of our population who become diabetic increases, so too do an array of other health problems. The most common complications of diabetes are reflected in disruptions or distortion of the functions of blood vessels. And so people who have diabetes have problems with the circulation to their eye. They have problems with the circulation to their kidneys. They have problems with the circulation to their heart. They have problems with the circulation to their skin. They have problems with the circulation to their nerves. And so all of a sudden we see individuals who have higher rates of heart disease, much higher rates of blindness as they age. Their kidneys fail. That requires